Good morning. Hello, everyone. We should wait a little bit more. So this one, we just did it. Okay. Perfect. Oh. Hello, hello. It's a beautiful day in New York City. We just back here. I don't see who's there, the name of, but some people there. Thank you for attending to the Friday morning. It's a beautiful day in New York. I don't need to worry about a microphone or anything because I'm not doing this. I mean, well, Max came here and helping me, so everything's set. I just talking to the microphone. Should be good. If the microphone is not great, please let me know. He's gonna fix it. Anyway, let's start. Actually, he's coming. It's beautiful bridge, moving great. Are you ready, Charlie?
No.
No. Okay. What do you need?
I can't find. I need music that has. Maybe it's here. Yeah, I found it. Because I need music that has measure numbers. So
Okay.
I'll take that.
Okay, he's coming. I made a coffee for him, so there's no excuse to be late. But, oh, I see who's there. Andrew, good morning. Vasco, I can't believe it. How are you doing, Vasco? Greeting from Shanghai, yes. Luciana, thank you for coming for every review. You never missed it. Yeah, great. Yeah. And Salva from Spain. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for coming. He'll be here soon. Just enjoy the beautiful view from our apartment window. I mean, it's much better than my iPhone. He has a professional camera. Looks so great. Yeah, you can see that how traffic is okay today. The George Washington Bridge is moving. Yeah. Yeah. He should be here in a minute. Please enjoy the view. Thank you.
Everything.
This microphone takes all the hour of the conversation, even our living room. That's amazing.
Uh-oh, I know. We have to be very careful what we say. It's a little bit messed up, but that's okay. Let's put this here. And I put this over here. Okay, and that's people who are watching. Oh, this is so interesting. What is this on top?
That's a microphone, not a mouse.
No, I know, but it looks like it needs a haircut, even more than I do.
Don't tell me, they don't see it. Okay, that's it.
I know they don't see it, but they can imagine. Everything about this is about imagination. Okay, I will deal with this one before we go. May I just have that? Thank you. Yeah. So get myself ready. I know that I'm very late, but perhaps I'll be efficient. I doubt it, though. Anyway, here we are. We are back in New York. Welcome everyone again. As you can see, I'm wearing these special glasses so I can wake up. I've got used to the past few weeks. Oh, what's happening? There's a lot of activity in the background. Now we have a whole crew.
Talk. Don't talk to us.
No, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the world. Yeah. I've got used to doing things at night and then having them broadcast during the morning. So going back to the morning is a little bit unfamiliar to me once again. So as I mentioned in the introductory note that I sent out on Facebook, the next couple weeks at least I will take a small breather from these live streams, basically due to the fact that we will be doing our Kitakarizawa music seminar, which generally has been in Japan, and since it cannot be in Japan this year, again, this is the second summer that it cannot be, we will be doing it online, and since there are students, especially all over the world, we have very odd hours for teaching and for master classes, etc. And once again, I can mention that although the participant roster is full, if anybody wants to audit, to just listen, because all the lessons, lectures, master classes will be open to people who want to simply watch them as well. If you want to audit, please go to the website, which I had mentioned in the introduction. It says Kitakarizawa Music Seminar.com, to the applications part, and just click on auditing procedures, I guess. I forgot what it's actually called. You know probably better than I do. Okay, that said, if anybody wants more information about this, please, you can write in comments here or in Messenger, whatever you want, and I will get back to you about that. Okay, first, as usual, this doesn't have much battery. I don't know why. I thought I was charging it. Considering that I was speaking about the impossibility of doing the music festival in Japan, I can go just very briefly to the Olympics and COVID-19. Is it two pole vaulters recently, just including the U.S. world champion Sam Kendricks, apparently tested positive in the Olympic Village, and that has raised the total of positive athletes since July 1st to 198. So what's supposed to be very under control is not completely under control, of course. I will come back to this in a little while, but move now to Florida, and the Delta variant, which in the United States, of course, is taking over the infections as it has been taking over the infections throughout the whole world. And Florida, as the New York Times has reported, just has now the greatest number of hospital admissions. And as they mentioned in the Times, they've exceeded the peak that they had seen in January of 2021. It is the most significant numbers that we have ever seen. This is from one of the doctors involved thus far in the pandemic. So the Delta variant, of course, is a variant of great concern. And what we find with this variant is that people who are vaccinated and may actually even still be asymptomatic, but can actually become infected and can infect others. So once again, this is something which is very dangerous now. And really it seems that the only solution is widespread, more and more widespread vaccination. And the United States now is lagging behind Europe in vaccinating people. There's been a great and very effective push throughout Europe for vaccination. In Asia, we still have a very big problem, and in Africa, of course, also a very big problem with this. I do hope that the problems of vaccination, I guess, will be solved, and these problems also have to do with people's ideas, people's beliefs, and a lot of fake news, which is actually going around and is still very much affecting people's attitudes towards vaccination. That interests me because so many millions of people have been vaccinated successfully that you would think that the idea that, oh, maybe I will not have a vaccine, don't take a vaccine because I'm not sure that it is safe, etc., that kind of concern would be somehow mitigated by just the knowledge that so many people have taken the vaccine already and been successful. I've been reading recently about the power of diagrams, and I won't show you any diagrams, but at some point maybe I will. But I was just thinking that in terms of vaccine, which I haven't seen in the clearest way, is diagram comparing number of successful vaccinations and number of complications. So in that case, we will see something like this and something that is almost not even there with it. And I think these kinds of simple diagrams probably have more effect in changing people's perceptions than complicated explanations or any kind of verbal persuasion, etc., would have. Okay, this is a little bit. So I have a lot of things, yes. Well, the climate of the world, of course, is not really, despite today's really gorgeous weather in New York, it's not really cooperating, and there was catastrophic flooding in Europe, in Germany, in Belgium, in Japan, in China, it's a Hunan province. Is that Henan? Hunan province. Sorry, I pronounced that correctly, but which is quite incredible when you saw how the water flash flooded completely these underground subway lines. It's really, and now there's catastrophic flooding, flash floods in Afghanistan. So you have tremendous amount of flooding and of water damage, I would say, throughout the world. In other parts of the world, for instance, in the west coast of the United States, you have catastrophic drought. So, well, this is what we have to look forward to, I guess. Now, what should I load here? Okay, I will. In the United States now, in Washington, you do have the congressional investigation into the January 6th riot. And of course, there are several, I would say, key people who are involved in that who do not want to testify and probably will have to be subpoenaed to testify in this. But what interested me especially is how after January 6th, so many companies actually declared that they would not give any more political contributions to politicians who had sought to overturn the election, the November election, to politicians who still assert that our former President Trump actually won and that the election is full of fraudulent voting. Now, that was perhaps a great moment because you had a coming together of business and progressive causes, I should say, denouncing this. Now, the question is, what happened afterwards? And there are many companies are still following their original pledge not to contribute. Then you have a company such as Toyota, which had been a huge donor to Republican causes and had pledged not to give to these people who were still supporting the false claim of fraudulent elections. But they went back on their pledge and began again donating to basically these 53 members of Congress who voted to overturn the election results. There was a huge backlash, I have to say, against that. I'm sorry. I'm reading here, and this was not 53. That's another company, which I'll talk about in a second. This is 47 members of Congress who were election fake news propagandas. What? The people, bah! Okay, I know. I always get tongue-tied after a moment. But in any case, after that backlash, popular backlash, Toyota actually decided, she backtracked and decided on July 8th that it would stop contributing to those members once again. We'll see how long that lasts. Now, several companies, though, have actually gone ahead to start contributing once again to these Republicans, especially the company Lockheed Martin. And that is the company which is right now donating to 53 members of Congress who voted on January 6th to overturn election results. Now, Lockheed Martin is a big defense contractor. It relies on military spending, and we see exactly their point of view, which has to do with this fighter aircraft, F-35, which is an incredible boondoggle, and so far in testing, it has been performed at only 39% effectiveness. But of course, it's being sold here and there that way. That's maybe it's good to have a fighter airplane that doesn't really work. I don't know. If the whole world has these kinds of planes, then maybe we would have a little bit less war, but that's a ridiculous statement I just made. Anyway, the program is plagued by cost overruns, etc., and you have a big movement to cancel the project, in fact. Now, of course, that's why Lockheed Martin is contributing to those members of Congress who are most likely to vote against canceling them. And why am I speaking about this now? I move to the stimulus package, which is now has great possibility. Well, yeah, this thing helps me stay awake, but it gets in the way. The stimulus package, which just this week actually seems like it will garner enough support, at least in the initial stages, to be passed, so that the negotiators hammered out a deal which includes $550 billion in new spending, and the Senate voted in a vote of 67 to 32, with 17 Republicans joining the Democrats, to actually begin debate on the measure. So in other words, not to cancel it outright, but to talk about it, and then maybe cancel it later. Now, I'm quoting a bit this wonderful blogger Heather Cox Richardson about this. This is now, they say the Congressional Budget Office, which examines bills to see how much they will cost, has not yet produced a final number, but it could be that the total spending over 8 years could cost around $1.2 trillion. Now, that seems like a lot of money, but when we talk about, we see this trillion, this billionaire, etc., it's in fact not a lot of money. Now, the budget office also said, puts together unspent monies from other programs and from new user fees to pay for it. That Republicans are demanding that funds to increase funding for the IRS to enable it to crack down on tax cheats. I have to rephrase that. That there is a movement to actually toughen the ability of the IRS, which is the Internal Revenue Service, which collects the taxes in the United States, to crack down on these rich tax cheats and companies especially, which are not supposedly paying their fair share of taxes or not paying any taxes at all. And that costs the United States about $1 trillion a year. The Republicans are demanding that that be stripped from this bill. Now, why am I talking about all of this? And that has to do with the fact that in general, and this will happen again, despite this push to cancel funding for the F-35, that the military budget is always outside of any, in a certain way, purview from the Congressional Budget Office. And that means that whatever kind of money the defense needs, they can get. Now, why is that not possible for other kinds of programs which will actually better the economic situation and social situation? I got this I can take off and I can actually think a little more clearly. Okay, I put this over here. I've wanted my traditional coffee since it's the morning. I did have my coffee at night as well, but that's just me. Okay. So, the way I see it myself, and I've talked about this modern monetary theory in the past, rather frequently, and I come back to it again, and it's the fact that the United States, as the issuer of a fiat, what's called a fiat currency, which is the dollar, does not have to worry about finding money to pay for something, because they can print the money to do it, and they do it all the time. So in fact, all this trying to find out from taxation, this, et cetera, how to gather money together to actually pay for this infrastructure program, to pay for the Green New Deal, et cetera, is in fact something that is simply ideologically, I would say, well, wait a second. I have to put this a different way. I think I need more of that. My brain still isn't functioning exactly correctly. That in fact, it just gives an excuse for people who do not want to actually institute changes, institute government activity for the betterment of society. It gives them an excuse to actually block it. You see. And there's always the issue of inflation, but we have never really seen inflation, which simply comes from an excess of government spending. And that's because we have never been at a place where the economy has worked at what we can call 100% capacity already. So there's always room for, actually what I would just say is betterment. Okay, now I go back to this money issue, and you have to remember always that money is simply a proxy. And the paper dollar, or the gold, whatever, is not so different. They're just different materials. But what they represent is not what is intrinsic to them. You see. For instance, if we needed to use as a form of currency what was most important for us, for our lives, we would probably have to use water, for instance. And there are places where there is tremendous shortage of water, and water becomes the most valued product and the most valued substance, I should say, and it becomes, in fact, the medium of exchange. And we find this earlier in what are called barter economies. I found that when I was a student in the Soviet Union, which had a currency, of course, that way, but in fact, most transactions among people ended up being barter transactions. So you go to a store and you develop a relationship with the salesperson at the store. Let's say it's a vegetable store. And that person, so you're the salesperson at the vegetable store can alert you that, okay, they got a shipment of green beans. And then, but you have some kind of material which can make a shirt. So you go to the store, you give the money, but that doesn't count. And then under the table, you give the material, and they give you the green beans. So this is a barter economy that you have this way, involving substances, things which have, I call objective value, this way. Now we go back to money. And if you have, for instance, what we call a gold standard, the problem you have is that gold, there's a limited amount of gold, and you have to go find more of it, which means that if somebody collects more gold, another person will have less gold that way. And so you have this break on not only sort of accumulation of wealth, but you have this break on basic economic activity because of this limitation that you have. And I just point this out now. This is a reason why I'm very concerned about this whole movement toward what's called bitcoins. And the reason I mean, the idea of bitcoins is to have a currency which is sort of not controlled by governments. But the big reason is that there is a limitation built into the programs on the actual total number of bitcoins, which will end up putting a brake on basically development, the similar kind of brake that we had with the gold standard. Blah, blah, blah. That just goes through that way. Okay, what else should I say? I just wrote down the little report from the New York Times that the U.S. heat warnings and heat advisories are now covering 80 million people in the United States across 20 states. And what that means is that you have, are you okay? Yeah, that's all right. I do have a small audience here, and actually that makes my life a little nicer. Anyway, so these heat warnings are warnings that, in fact, the heat can be not only dangerous for your health, but can actually be deadly. And so, this is, again, our climate not really being nice to us, we can say. I have other things here, but I move just to a few things. This is, first I also read, and this was some news that I was very happy about. It's the family of Henrietta Lacks. Now, Henrietta Lacks was a black woman who, she died of cervical cancer at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore in 1951 at the very young age of 31 years. And her cells, the tumor cells, or some of them, were taken and transmitted to a researcher without her knowledge and used until this day, have been used until this decade for research purposes. And those cells have actually been critical in the development of vaccines, in cancer treatments, in cloning techniques, and they have led to products which are worth billions of dollars recently, but the family, of course, got no compensation. I just have someone else entering into this domain. And finally, oh gosh, you know, I don't have a charge. I need some kind of charger on my...
I'll be back.
Yeah, thank you. Because I want to show you there's a book which was written a while ago, actually, about it, and that's how I first learned of Henrietta Lacks and what are called the HeLa cells. This is a book written in 2010 by Rebecca Skloot. It's called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. And in any case, finally, the family, the grandchildren, are suing to get proper recognition and proper compensation for the use of Henrietta Lacks' cells. Here, let me go here. Here we are. And the only thing I want to see if I can all of a sudden, a second. Yeah, no, difficult, because I have to look for this. I wasn't thinking of actually, this is very last minute. I just read about this. Let's see. Here we are. Got it. Yeah. Ah. Wait. No. Here. Where's the book? The cover. I need cover. Oh, okay. Well, anyway. This is the wrong cover, but it's give you something. You okay? I should do this. Can we up? All right. Good. Yeah. It's very well written, actually very interesting. So, I do recommend it. Okay, I go back. Before I go on, perhaps I... You have no idea what's going on in the background here. Yes, okay. I won't bother introducing more books, although I'd love to. Yeah. But just a few things more which are very interesting, I found. And this is first about nature itself. And in 1920, the remarkable inventor Nikola Tesla, which we probably knows from this manufacturer, car company, which appropriated his name. I wonder if they actually gave any members of his family any compensation for this. But Nikola Tesla, who did really fascinating work. He was an inventor of doing things with electricity, doing things with fluid dynamics, and he developed a circular shaped pipe which he called a valvular conduit, and that promoted one-way flow of liquid without any need of moving parts. So it was shaped in a way that the liquid would flow one way, would not actually be able to flow backwards. And that, now, this is just very recently. It was found that the shark's intestines have a spiral shape just almost identical to Tesla's flow tube. So, somehow, evolution, probably a million years ago or so, came up with the same solution. Let's see if I have a picture of that. That's an interesting. Okay. I just thought it's kind of nice to show this to people. So this is okay. So that's a shark's intestine. Okay, that's enough of that. Then this is a little bit disturbing, but it's an article from Hakai magazine. And it's that, in fact, noise pollution, which of course we've known for many years that can hurt marine animals. It can hurt whales, it can hurt scallops even. Yeah, I know, but I don't want to play really so much today, so that's why I'm talking about all of this. But anyway, however, it's not limited to animals who have ears. Now, in fact, it's not even limited to animals. But they found that a protective seagrass species native to the Mediterranean Sea, which is called Neptune grass, can experience significant acoustic damage when exposed to low-frequency artificial sounds for only 2 hours. And they say the damage is especially pronounced in the parts of the plant responsible for detecting gravity and storing energy. So I find it's absolutely fascinating. And of course, this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I think I probably mentioned this, but it's an acquaintance of mine, a Japanese acquaintance, who was a doctor, medical researcher, if I remember him correctly, was talking to me, also an amateur clarinetist, spoke to me about a little study he did. This is kind of typical study, with a certain plant, and I forgot the name of the plant. And so he had one plant. He had listened to the Magic Flute of Mozart. Then he had a control plant, which was just growing normally without any kind of sonic intervention, we could say. And another plant, he had listened to the Bruckner Seventh Symphony. And what he found, and he showed me pictures, I'm not going to bother looking and showing you these photos, but if you trust this guy, of course the Mozart plant was incredibly luxurious. The control plant grew normally, and the Bruckner plant died. It doesn't really tell you anything, except it is rather curious. And this is another example of plants somehow being affected by, well, in this first case with Neptune grass, it was noise, and this is kind of structured noise, we could say. Okay. I have a few more things but I will be talking about music, I promise. And this is I just wanted to introduce a woman whose name was Eunice Foote. And she was a scientist, and she was the first person to discover that carbon dioxide absorbs heat and this in 1856, she theorized that if the Earth's atmosphere were to become more filled with carbon dioxide, the planet's temperature would rise. So, the first theoretical understanding of the process of what we call global warming we can attribute to Eunice Foote. Now, this here, another thing, this is a sketch of Eunice. Okay. See, Foote actually conducted a very simple experiment. So, she had two glass cylinders, put a thermometer in each of the glass cylinders, and pumped carbon dioxide into one, and regular air, just air from there, into the other one, and closed the cylinders and set the cylinders in outside in the sun. Now the cylinder containing carbon dioxide got much hotter than the one which just had air. Very simple, very clear, and rather brilliant. Well, that's it. So, anyway, that's that one interesting little tidbit. I also have this. I won't bother showing it more, but this is also very recently. Astronomers actually were able to view the back of a black hole and to see that, find energy sort of emanating from it, proving Albert Einstein to be correct in the prediction he made following his theory of general relativity. Okay. Uh-oh. What's that? Yes. But I'm almost done with this, and I'll be that. Okay, there's one more thing I just have to show you, and this is in Thailand, and this is, this is here. You can see. Okay. If you can see it. Oh, you can see more actually. Okay. How do I turn this off? There we go. Okay. Enough of that. Now, that was this huge battle between two rival groups of monkeys. There's a lot of discussion about nature versus nurture, about social conditioning versus genetics, etc., etc. But this tendency towards aggression we see in our close neighbors in very a kind of disturbing form. But, I know. Now I can move on finally. That's and I move on to music, and I'm going to look at the Brahms E-flat Sonata, the first movement, in detail from the point of view of what I would call the inquisitive performer. And I'm doing this because I believe that musical analysis, and I espouse what I call informal analysis, in a way, should be for the benefit of creating more gripping performance. Otherwise, I don't really see the point myself, but that may be just my own limitation. And I decided to do this because I was introduced to and read an article in the New York Times about this big controversy that is erupting in this terribly small world of Heinrich Schenker. Now, Schenker, of course, was a theoretician who, in a way, changed the view of music theory. And it turns out, and this is something that was not new information, that I've known this forever, that he was not a very nice person. And he was someone who was believed in the primacy of Germanic culture this way. And now there's erupting this big ruckus about him and how perhaps he must be canceled, etc., etc. And of course he died in 1930 something. All of a sudden I just don't remember the exact date. And had he lived longer, his view perhaps would have changed a bit. He was a Jewish theoretician, and he would have perhaps, had he not been able to flee, he would have been perhaps incarcerated in a concentration camp and probably killed. Anyway, I look at someone like Schenker myself, and I see that, well, he had made certain contributions. And it's not the person that we see, but it's the contributions which we can actually utilize in ways which do not depend on the actual makeup of the person who came up with these contributions. And I'm a practical Schenkerian because one thing that he did show, and I talked about this much earlier here, was there's a difference between what we call foreground, as in linguistics and sorry, and background in music, and there are certain key connections which may not even be contiguous, but are important. Now, of course, from my own perspective, when I look at his own analyses, what I find is most of them are incredibly obvious. But this sense of what is ornament and what is essential, let's say, is very important, I believe, for performers. Okay, now that sort of spurred my thinking about what I should do in this live stream. And there are two things, and this is what I want to show in looking at Brahms. And I look at Brahms, I think, because I did look at it from showing connections with this final chorale from the St. Matthew Passion, etc., very early in my live streams. It's perhaps people have forgotten about things like that, but you can always look in the archive and find out. So I'm not going to deal with that now, but I'm going to look at it like I was looking at some other things before, as a performer. And what I mentioned in the introduction was that we have to look at the moment, and we live in the moment. But that moment is informed by moments in the past and in the future as well, as music sort of traverses time. And so when we see the moment, we also should have a feeling of where it's coming from and where it's going, perhaps. But anyway, it's the moment that creates the expression. So, I start now, and I'm going to start with something else, not with Brahms. So let me put this away. Okay, now I don't need this, I think, anymore. The question is, I will look at the music, but I will, in a minute. Let me put this somewhere. I'll put it back here. Okay. So what do I look at first? I look at something totally different by a composer who was not a big fan of Brahms. The composer Pavel Tchaikovsky, and it's his Fifth Symphony. And why am I looking at that? I was going to look at different pieces, but I thought this is particularly striking in a way. And it's the opening of the Fifth Symphony. And I'm looking at the Fifth Symphony because it's a piece which I find fascinating in its distillation of a program, I should say, or a sense, and this is the sense of fate, whatever. The distillation in musical moments of this. And the beginning, I want to show now, simply because I have never heard it. I don't have to stand up, I want to go down, 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 because this is fate. That which is pushes on you like this. And I said, anyway, okay. So I've never heard it in what I think is the way Tchaikovsky intended it to be. And of course I don't know how he intended it, but what I see in the harmonic detail, the moments of this. And when I've conducted, I've tried to actually accomplish this. I'm not sure how well I was able to, but I will go through the idea now. And of course, you know, it's very simple. Players, we've all played this in auditions this way, and the idea is, oh, you have to be even, has to be sound, blah 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 blah. Anyway, but we can see it's very repetitious, and again, starts again softly. Then gets a lot louder. And then it's not as loud. Then it's sforzando. And then we have going on, but etc. The piece begins itself. Okay, so you look at this, and it's like, okay, Tchaikovsky is so verbose. He does the same thing over and over again. He can't make up his mind. But let's look at this in detail, in a way. And we start with this motive. And even that's interesting, because this is making a lot of noise, but what can I do about it? Yeah. We have this string accompaniment, which is very bass heavy. What's your leg? Again. And then the clarinet is alone, or two clarinets. But then here again we have again. And then we have this. Subtly different in a very poignant and important way. That this one is direct, and then and that has great liturgical significance. Here is that. And then we think that she should do the same thing, but no. Then again. Sorry, I think I did it wrong. Oh, sorry. That's right. again. Sorry, I'm not doing this right. That's that, and then this. And then that happens. But when we look at it this way, it's not verbose, it's not run-on, but it's remarkable. And it's tremendously profound. I would say its opening has the kind of emotional profundity of a passage from a novel of Tolstoy, for instance. And it would be nice to actually hear it that way. I can go on through the symphony to bring out parts like this in general, which I hope will actually show it in a different light, perhaps. I think the only recording I know which comes close to this is actually by Mengelberg. Okay, so I can dwell on this more, but I will go now to Brahms, to the Sonata. Perhaps later I will do other works of Brahms as well. And I have this book which I have not really used, but this is the only book that has measured numbers, so that I can. And I'm wondering if perhaps you can look. Can we move the camera, perhaps, till we can see the music at all? Or is that not going to be really possible? Okay, we don't see it, but I will explain for those of you who have measured numbers, and I will play for you this way. So this is the etc., etc. It goes back. No? Okay. The chord is too short, right? It's all right. I think it will. People know this well enough, I think, and hopefully some of you actually have scores you can follow with this. Is that way. Now I preface this, or shall we put another music in front, maybe? Well, that's an interesting idea. Where did they go?
Not there. Should not be there.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't we use? But I have here. But you see that this doesn't have measure numbers.
But that's okay.
But that's okay, maybe. Yeah. Because at least we have. This is. I do this is so people you can go through and sort of pan to it. So this is the beginning. Okay. So now I preface this remarks by making a general comment, and like often the things that I'm saying now, it's a little simplistic, but as I see it, the the ability to create large forms of music is intimately tied with the development of notation. And what notation, writing down, enables one to, as writing, to go back and revisit what you've written earlier. Okay. And that's why when we are actually studying a piece of music, it's nice to look at the score and see, and look here and there. So then we get a perspective in our minds, and even though we're at the moment that we have is informed by what happened and also what will happen. So, in a sense, the piece of music that we have exists both in time and out of time. That's a good thing. And again, I come to this piece, and one thing that I think as you're looking at the score, and I'm looking at the score as a performer now. Yeah, looking at as a performer and find what can make this piece unusual, what can make this piece interesting, what can make this piece beautiful, what can make this piece emotionally vibrant, we can say. Okay, and I look at it and I find what is the part that for me is most unusual. Maybe for someone else a different part is most unusual, but I tend to think that in this composition, which is this first movement, which is only 173 measures long. So in other words, it's not many measures, in fact, that you have a huge amount, and I've talked about this a lot, so those of you who know of this already, just bear with me, because it'll become more interesting. There's a huge amount of simply E-flat major. Now, of course, this piece is in E-flat major, S-dur. Yeah. And we have it from here. We have again E-flat. And then again. And again. Then again. And again. This way. So we have 8 solid measures with nothing happening except E-flat major. And, you know, I hear performances of this piece which are pretty nice. They come to the end and it's actually rather boring. Yeah, okay, I should not actually say things like that. Okay, I've been admonished and I apologize. Now, there's an extra 4 measures, which is going through circle of fifths, but around E-flat. Solid measures, tranquillo rhythm, in simply E-flat major. Now, why is this interesting? This is interesting because out of 173 measures, you have 12 measures at the end, which are harmonically completely static, in a way. And you wonder why a composer of Brahms' stature and Brahms' greatness, we can say, why he decided that he needed that. And again, as I've mentioned earlier many times, it's not because he was old, that he lacked inspiration, that he had a deadline and had to finish it quickly. Nothing of that sort. There had to be a very significant reason. And this reason is actually a little bit complicated and goes back, again, to the first sonata. And the first sonata, the first movement of the first sonata, which is in F minor, but actually has tension between two neighboring keys, which is F minor and F sharp minor, which goes back. Yeah. And this fundamental musical issue, I should say, of why two keys which are so close are harmonically so far apart. Anyway, I think interested Brahms, and the second sonata, he does something which is actually more sophisticated even than the first sonata. And we see that in the next part, which is interesting here. And that is here. Could have ended there, that way. So this is in E major. And this is a part of this piece which is in the wrong key and the wrong place. Because if we go to the beginning of the piece, we have this. This way in E flat, in the very beginning of this piece, the second. And instead of, as he moves to his recapitulation, doing that, he puts this right before the coda of the piece in the wrong key. And so then the question in my mind, and this is again as a performer, it's not simply an academic issue, is why? And, you know, Brahms was a composer and, of course, a performer. And he felt his music deeply. He didn't simply compose his music. Right? He felt it. And there are reports of them coming to visit him, and he's playing a piece of his, or one of the intermezzo of that, and he is actually bawling, just crying, because he's so overcome with emotion. You see. So he is writing as a performer. So I look at this, and then I look more carefully here. And I look and see that we have what is basically the so-called development of the piece, and this is a complicated thing in this piece because everything is in a way development. But we see here, from this place here, G major. So here we have E major, G major. There. And we think, this already is rather interesting because going from E flat here, we have this moving to E major. And then we see actually a bit later going here. I don't know why I'm not doing well. We have going to, he spells that as C flat, but to B major. So we actually have this. And from there, that way. And that will lead to E major. You see. And then we look more, and we see, but at the same time, he has a very normal moving to a dominant B flat and back to E flat major. So you have two different tonal directions happening at once. Yeah. So this is sort of preliminary work for the performer to see how things are developing in a piece of this sort. That way. And then, with that in mind, you wonder, how do I play this piece to bring out this special nature? And I think about it, I think that, well, in a certain sense, because Brahms is in E flat, but constantly moves away, and we have this tendency, which is in a certain sense even stronger in this piece, to move to E major. That it's as if we sort of lose our way. And then I go back to the melody. And, first I have to say that I'm taking a break from the clarinet at the moment for at least a couple days. So I was going to play things on the clarinet. I thought, nah, I'll just play on the piano, even though I'll make tons of mistakes. So we have this. And you wonder, I've always da-dee-da-dee-da-dee-da-da, and I thought, oh, this melody is a little bit, starts nicely and then is a little bit odd. And then I think, aha, well, this sort of losing way we can see in this melody. The very beginning of this piece. And we start this way. And then it should just go to here. But he does continue, of course. He is this way. It goes here. But becomes unstable at that moment, I think. Is this making too much noise? No? This way, and becomes unstable at this moment. And I look at this more, and I also see that there's an octave, another octave, and then this, which of course is is a quotation from the first sonata. That's the sort of should ring a bell. Oh. And that first sonata, the reason we have that is because we go from F minor to deceptive cadence going in D flat. What am I doing? I'm really I have to play an A flat, not an E flat. That's right. Yeah. Anyway, this sense of being in the wrong place in a certain way in the first sonata, we then see in a more sophisticated way here. Now let's look even more carefully. This way. And we have to start this way. And then he could have done this. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he starts in this very normal way. And then he changes the music. And the rhythm, what we can call this harmonic rhythm, speeds up. So he goes from the whole measure to the half measure to the quarter measure, and then he goes back. And then this continued. And then we move back to a restatement of this opening melody, in a way. So, I look at this beginning, and I see these moments where he changes things in a subtle way, and as a performer, I want to know, how do I realize these changes, these moments? And I think that this kind of octave going has a sense of this way. So, am I looking over here? The octaves go up. They don't go. They go up this way. So we start with this regular, and then, it's like, oh, what's happening now? So this is a sense of losing your way and then looking for it again. And this is what I call informal analysis. So I have these imaginary images at first, but they have to do with the structure of what is actually happening in the music. Then we go on in this piece here, and we see how this moves again, which is a variation of the melody. And again, we move back to the first sonata with that motion from F to G flat. There we have, that's here. And then with that C. And then we have here the D flat and the C together. Which of course, those two notes which inform the first sonata, we see how they start to inform this sonata in a way. And then, since we feel this, we start to look for these various connections, the F to the G flat, the D flat to the C. So in any case, we have this here. And then it keeps moving on. And then we come to the next theme, which again has octaves. This is this and this. And so it's like what Brahms always does, it's a canon this way, here. And that I find kind of interesting because we have so that octave he translates into this. And then he moves on with that. So there's a connection with this, but what does that connection mean? This again, I think, has this sense of searching this way. This goes always up. So we have here, and then this is, if you wonder about it, and it goes to here. There's another moment of interest. I told this the moment of interest. But we see, I wonder, this. So we take this final chorale motif, we can say, that Brahms constructed. And we find that in fact, and you can see this in the beginning too, and I think that I actually pointed this out very early in the live streams, we see how those four measures actually, in a certain sense, generates this second sonata as well, but in this more sophisticated way, I could say, interesting way. Because for instance, this is the end of the chorale backwards. And again, we're losing our way. So this is, and then we have this hairpin, which, as we know from reading about the way Brahms played, meant that you stretch. And then we have a variation of this melody together with starting here. And then we have this kind of dance music going with these offbeats in the piano. With it but they are interesting, again this interest in that this beat is in the wrong place. But all the time, we have this propulsion this way happening. So, all of this has anyway this kind of sense of searching moving throughout. Okay. I know time is of an essence, so I will move on. And all we have, so we see these octaves which move this way. We see how his sense of rhythm always goes against, even from the beginning. Let's go back to here. We have this way. And even here. Everything moves against the downbeat. Yeah. So this whole piece has this feeling of going that way throughout, of sort of not sort of stable in place, but somehow always moving in a direction which perhaps, in a sense, is not so obvious at first. Okay, I think that I'm overstepping my welcome in a certain way in this live stream. So I mentioned how in the beginning how we have these two tonal directions that he's moving to. And he moves in quite a convincing way at the end to this E major, which should be very special. And then going from it as if he would finish here, but instead we find that E flat is the final resting point of this piece. And so this tranquillo has finally, after a whole motion, I would say, in this piece, which is unsettled, of great sort of calm, etc., because, in fact, in a way, we are home. I didn't talk at all about this middle part, which is so interesting, but anyway, I think I talked enough, and what is more important, perhaps, is to just listen at the end. And I thought it would be nice to play a recording of a performance from Japan, which the great pianist Robert Levin and I gave on period instruments. There are a couple caveats about this performance, because first of all, you know, Mühlfeld, who was obviously a great artist, his reports of his playing is that sometimes he would squeak and he would play the wrong note and he did this and the other thing. I don't think I squeak, but it's not perfect. There's one note there which you can see, which has to do with my little fingers this way. And also, and I hope that Bob Levin will forgive me for actually perhaps broadcasting this in this sense, because his playing is quite remarkable. But the piano, which was a Streicher piano, the same model as the one which Brahms had in his apartment, though, but it was not in great condition and had notes which were sticking in it, even though it was repaired, etc., for the concert. So these are two small caveats, but I do think that the performance is interesting enough that it's worthwhile listening to, regardless. So this is the first movement, Allegro Amabile, of the Brahms E-flat Sonata. I guess I'm back now after this. Well, thank you for bearing with me. I know that was a little too verbose, especially in the beginning. But I hope that at least this will sort of show you a way of looking at moments of the piece as being very special. And not only this piece, but music in general. And as I mentioned, we'll be taking a couple-week break in this, so that the next 2 weeks, because of the music festival, which I talked about at the very beginning, will not be able to do the live stream. And you probably had enough of it anyway, while you were watching. And what I'd like to do, though, is while we are on this vacation from the live stream, please send me ideas for what you would like me to talk about. What pieces, what elements of technique, what general elements of music, what anything that interests you, troubles you, or you like another explanation about, or something with which you disagree with me about as well. Just send them to me, and I will continue with it by addressing them. So listen, everyone, I hope that you stay very well, and I hope that you will not be in too great situation with heat. Actually, New York is rather hot, but we don't have the extreme heat and forest fires, etc., that are encompassing a decent part of the western part of the United States. But once again, be well, and I will see you again, I think, in a couple of weeks. Take care.